Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Adam Kligfeld's weekly Rashi study class.
To anyone who might be listening to this on the Temple Beth Am podcast. We are in chapter 8 of the book of Exodus, and I believe just did verse 19, and we're about to jump to verse 20. 19 was the Samti Fadut, where God says, I'm going to place some kind of a separation between my people and your people. And this is, of course, within the conversation that God tells Moshe to tell Pharaoh, right? So it's not actually God talking to Pharaoh. Tomorrow this plague or this sign, but it means plague is coming. That was where we ended off. And now we're on verse 20. Joel, do you want to read verse 20? Maybe I should just do it today so that to go quicker. Because you're only hearing me. I don't need the mic. You're only hearing me from my computer. Okay. Vayas Adonai Cain, Vayavo Arov Kaved Beta Faro, Uvet Abadav Uvachol Eretz Mitzrayim, Tishachet Haaretz Mipnei Ha'arov. God did this, meaning God did as God had said God was going to do in the previous extended quotation marks, which, interesting, if I'm not mistaken, all of that was God telling Moshe what to say to Pharaoh. I don't think we have a record of Moshe actually saying it to Pharaoh, right? Like if you go back to verse 19, it's Vayomer Adonai al Moshe, God said to Moses, get up in the morning and stand in front of Pharaoh and say this. And all of that ends at the end of verse 19. We don't have the encounter this time actually taking place, but it's just that now we're being told that God did so, not that Moshe did so, which is interesting. Vayavo arov kaved, a heavy amount of arov, either understanding of the word that you have in mind, came. Beta Pharaoh, to the house of Pharaoh. Beta means the hay at the end of bayit means to the, and the Pharaoh is because of bumaf and ahoy. The hay of Beta takes out the dagesh of Pharaoh. Uvet Abadav, and to the house of his servants, Uvachol Eretz Mitzrayim, and upon all the land of Egypt. Tishachet haaretz mipnei ha'arov. What's the root or the meaning of the verb tishachet? Sheshech. But what does it mean? To destroy. We had that in Parshat Noach. I talked a lot about that in my Shabbat Drash 2 weeks ago. Vatishachet haaretz Hamas, right? Mipnei Hamas. That it was the earth was being destroyed because of the presence of Hamas. Mipnei ha'arov, in the face of, or because of the arov, whether it's the wild beasts or the swarming animals. Rashi is only interested in one aspect of the verse. For people who have not yet looked at the Rashi, which you probably just did because I pointed you there, anyone identify a part of the verse that needs attention, that is curious, or that you're curious about? Either a vocab word or a grammar question or a content question. Because the storyline in verse 20 is pretty straightforward, right? This is the beginning of the third plague, fourth plague. Fourth plague, right? The thing that Rashi has a question about is the word tishachet. Okay? Tishachet is what tense? Future, right? There's no vav in front of it, so it's not a vav ayipuch. It's a future tense verb, but this is a past tense sentence within a past tense story. So the whole story is past tense, but it's not like we're in a part of the story where the Torah is saying, and this will happen, but rather God did so, and the arov did come into all the houses. It should have said, v'shachata haaretz, that the earth was destroyed. Tishachet seems to be a future tense verb in a past tense sentence, and that's what Rashi is curious about. Joanne, I hear your hand up. Speak as loud as you can because you're only going to be heard through my microphone on the computer.
I'm also curious about Beta Paro. Why the hay at the end? Is it the hay like Safona, Mitzrayma, which indicates towards? And why say that and not simply Beit Paro?
Yeah. So the first part of your question is correct.
Sounds like an ultrasound. Who's pregnant?
It's towards, and I guess you need a preposition that the verb lavo requires a preposition connecting the coming to the thing that it's coming to. So it could have been vayavo arov kaved el beit paro or leveit paro. We could ask the question why, and I actually have no idea of the biblical grammar theory in this as to why and when the Torah uses the hey at the end, which probably has a specific way of describing that hey. I forgot what it's called, as opposed to the preposition. But the fact that a preposition is required, I think, is pretty straightforward. But I hear Stevie having a suggestion. So Stevie?
Well, not a suggestion, just a confusion.
1 second, Joanna. Yeah.
That it's only required once, right? Uvei davadav does not receive it.
Right. Had it been a preposition, I'm thinking, vayavo arov kaved el beit paro, would we have needed ve'el beit avadav, or would the el have gone through?
It could go either way.
Could go either way. So maybe the hey being turned in the el, the preposition of the el or the la of before baya being turned into the hey takes care of all of the other nouns. I'm not sure, but Joanna, I know you seem to have another thought.
No, that was exactly my question. One time beta and one time bait?
Yeah. Let's be on the lookout the next time we have a sentence that has a preposition and several nouns attached to it, and if the Torah always carries the preposition through each time, like the Oxford comma, the Oxford preposition. Okay. Anything else in the verse before we look at Rashi's treatment of Vatishachet? And his treatment is going to be very simple. Basically, he's going to say, yeah, it looks like that, but it doesn't mean that. But that's what he's concerned about in the verse. Okay, so look at Vatishachet Haaretz. Joel, you got a forward Rashi. Oh, it was I. So I have a forward Rashi. Tishachet haaretz, he says, nishchata haaretz. He says, yeah, it looks future. Guess what? It's past. And then he says, and even Onkelos understood it that way. It chabalat ara, and it chabalat in Aramaic is very certainly a past tense verb, not a future tense verb. And he's basically saying sometimes the Torah, it's not only the case that the vav hayipuch changes what a verb actually looks like. Sometimes an actual past tense, future tense construction just has to be understood as a past tense. And I think this also goes back to the fact that our modern, and I suppose Rashi's medieval understanding of tense in general language is just different than the ancient one, right? That it's more of a concrete distinction in our minds than it was in the ancient world. And there was a fluidity of how verbs were used to describe something in the past, present versus future. Okay, that's verse 20. Rick, please.
Yeah, hi. I just looked at the English in verse 19. It talks about Tishachet, Rashi. Tishachet means the ground was being destroyed. The imperfect tense denotes what was then going on continuously. I don't know if that helps.
You mean verse 20?
No. In verse 19, in the Silverman, it's got this translation of Tishachet Haaretz. This is 19, I'm looking at it. After the V'samti Fedut, and then he did Tishachet Haaretz.
Yeah, but it's verse 20, but that's okay.
Omitted the 20 in parentheses that should be there in the book.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Right, okay, so that's the commentary on 20.
Yeah.
It's going on continuously?
Right. Right. The difference between, and this now we're getting into real Picayune grammar, the difference between an imperfect and a perfect version of a past tense verb. A perfect version of a past tense verb meaning something happened and it's over, and an imperfect, it's so hard to, I've never been good at describing this in English words, but it had happened, or it was happening, and it might still be happening from the perspective of the voice in the text, right? We don't think it's still happening as we're reading it, but the text saying, like, in the moment it happened ongoing, and something like that, like the imperfection of that past tense verb, I know this sounds weird, denotes a certain future ongoing action. And that's why it might have been tishachet, like, and through all of the, and Pharaoh's house and his servant's house and the land of Israel, it was continuing to happen that the earth was being destroyed by the Arov, and that's why it might have required or called for a verb that looked future, something like that. Alan, let's do it loud.
Yes, in the Saperstein edition, it says some editions of Rashi read, this means the land was being destroyed, as Targum Oculus renders it in the past tense, and it says et Kabbalat are and I'm looking at the Onkelos in here, and it says, it starts off with mit Kabbalat, and then it says Nun Aleph is Rashi Tevot.
Nun Aleph means Nusach Acher, a different version.
A different version is et Kabbalat. An Aleph.
Yeah.
Yeah, or actually it Kabbalat. Yeah, let's leave it there. I think we've plumbed it enough, but I'm not sure.
I just was surprised to see it.
Yeah. Okay, verse 21. Vayikra Pharaoh el Moshe ul Aharon vayomer lechu zivchu lelochem ba'aretz. So the fourth plague has done its work. Pharaoh called to Moses. Here we have the double preposition el Pharaoh ul Aharon. Although it's interesting, the preposition changes. Right? It's not el Moshe ve'el Aharon. It's el Moshe ul Aharon. So el and le are similar, but not the exact same words. So it's interesting here. We'll now like attuned to this as we read through.
Rabbi,
yeah,
it says that there's a hyphen between El and Moshe. What's the purpose of that? Would that have an impact on the grammar?
El doesn't have its own trope. If there's a hyphen.
Yeah, tropistically it means it's a single word. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And also, by the way, that changes the vowel, because if El were its own word with its own trop, it would have a tsere, a long A, because a closed, stressed syllable takes a long vowel. But since this is now an unstressed syllable in a 3-syllable word, to get really nitty gritty, the vowel changes from a long A to a short E. So Pharaoh said to Moses, Aaron, and Pharaoh called them and said to them, or said, I added it to them, go and slaughter, right? Offer an offering to your God, Ba'aretz, in the land. Questions, comments on the verse, Elon, and just project.
Okay, how's this?
Good. Are you hearing him when he projects? Good. Do it like SNL, news for the hard of hearing.
Yes. Our top story tonight.
What is meant by in the land?
Right. That's the clear question, right? Because in certainly in colloquial modern Hebrew, when you say Ani holech el haaretz, we're saying, where are we going?
Israel.
Land of Israel, right? Now that's a modernism, right? In fact, Israelis sometimes don't even use the word Israel. They say, Ani chozer la'aretz, I'm returning to the land. They often don't say Ani chozer la'medinat Israel, I'm returning to the state of Israel, just the land, right? That is not necessarily a biblical construction, but it's still ambiguous, because what do we think Pharaoh was saying to them? Go and slaughter in the land. What is the land? Let's throw out some possibilities. So it could be in this land, right? Meaning the intention, meaning do it, like do your offering here, but I'm not letting you go, right? What else?
Could mean like go out of the city, go out there, find a field.
Okay, so I'm not letting you go as far as you want to go, but you certainly can't do it here. So go out into almost like the wilderness. Anyone else? Stevie?
Whatever was tishachated, right? The land that was just smitten. Right?
Interesting.
Like that land, right? Redeem it with your sacrifices.
Very nice. So we have in the previous verse haaretz. So we're at whatever that aretz was referred to. You go and do your magical thing out there to undo what our land is experiencing. Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Okay. Before we look at Rashi, look back to chapter 5, verse 3.
How about you just tell them?
Just look back.
You go back.
Just keep a hand there. So chapter 5, verse 3. This is one of the first encounters back in Parshat Shemot of Moshe and Aaron to Pharaoh, right? Chapter 5:1, that Moses and Aaron came and they said to Pharaoh, this is what God had said to us, release my people and they will celebrate to me in the desert. Pharaoh said, who is God that I should listen to God's voice, such that I'm going to dispatch Israel? I don't know this God, lo yadati Adonai, and nor will I let Israel go. And they said back to him, meaning Moses and Aaron, Vayomru Elohei Avrim Nikra Aleinu, the God of the Hebrews has called out upon us. Let us go, derech shloshet yamim, 3-day journey, Bamidbar, into the wilderness, similar to what Sue had said. And there we will offer offerings to God. It's interesting phrase, I hadn't thought about this in a long time, lest a plague or a sword come upon us. I think the suggestion there, meaning we're not going to do it in your presence, we're going to do it in isolation, far away from you, right? So Rashi is about to say something that is at least an allusion to this verse, that so far the hovering request by Moses and Aaron is not yet let us go and we're going to the land of Canaan and we're never coming back. Let us go out to the outskirts beyond the center here, do our sacrifice, and we'll come back, right? So with that in mind, Rashi says on Tishachet, Zivchu lehem ba'aretz, bimkomchem, in your place, right? What might that be a reference to? Where do the Jews live? Is Hebrews live? Goshen, right? Stay in your area, ba'aretz, in the land that you live on. Is the addition. Velo telchu bamidbar. Don't go out to the desert, meaning it's a partial acquiescence. Okay, your God is really, I'm understanding, this God really wants you to sacrifice to God. I've suffered 4 plagues. I'll let that happen. Rashi says, don't read this as a Pharaoh saying, I relent to the maximum of what you've requested so far. The maximum of what you requested so far is to go 3-day journey out into the wilderness and sacrifice. They have not yet requested, let my people go, all the way. And Pharaoh's saying, I'm giving you a half answer. You can do your sacrifices here. I'm going to call your bluff is the most important thing in sacrifices. Sure, but ba'aretz, in this land or in the part of the land that you occupy. Rick, is your hand up again or still?
No, again. I was going off the Vayikra at the beginning. I looked back to see how Pharaoh talked to Moses and Aaron before. Back in verse 4, same chapter 8, verse 4, it starts again, Vayikra Pharaoh, more intense tro, the Kadma V'Yazla. There's also Lemoshe Ula Haron there, just to throw that in. And then at the
same preposition, right?
Yeah, and then at the end, it's V'yizbechu Ladonai instead of Elohechem. And I wanted to ask you, Elohechem, is that plural? Your God, if Pharaoh was thinking gods are plural, is Lelohechem here in our verse? Is that singular or plural? Isn't it plural?
It's both plural. The word Elohim is
plural anyway, yes.
Single God. The chem is plural possessive. So
yours, yes.
Go plural, slaughter plural, to your plural God, meaning to the God of all of you. Yeah.
Okay.
You're right that the Torah puts in Pharaoh's mouth both the generic version of the name of God, Elohim, and the inside version of the name of God, back in the verse that you showed us to 8:4, Adonai. So the Torah posits God, the Torah posits Pharaoh knowing both names for God, right? The what we would consider the God of judgment and the God of Rachamim, the God that is formed from the Hebrew word that just means divinity versus our God, Yud Hey Vav Hey. The Torah has Pharaoh using both of those somewhat interchangeably. Maybe they imagine that Pharaoh learned those words from Moshe in the interactions.
Exactly.
Redactors.
Different redactors. Yeah. The JEPD. Okay. Anything else in verse 21? All right. Moving right along. Our shortest class ever is going to be our most productive class. Verse 22. Vayomer Moshe. Moses responds to Pharaoh's having spoken to Moses and Aaron. This is a very interesting verse, as opposed to all the other ones, which are totally uninteresting. Lo nachon lasod kain. It's not proper to do this. Look how the word nachon and the word kain, right? They're two words apart, and they may even be built from the same root. So nachon, which we don't think of what its etymology when we use it in modern Hebrew, it just means right. It either is built from the same root from which we get mukhan, readiness, or from the root kain, which means in modern Hebrew, yes, but it can mean such, right, and proper. And it may be that those two roots are from the same root, right? But it's interesting that it's used so close to each other here. How does Onkelos render that? Lo takain lemeved kain. Interesting. So Onkelos does not read nachon and kain from the same root, or doesn't care that he's translating them into different roots. He uses the Aramaic kain, which is interesting that he doesn't use the more Aramaic version of the word kain, which is hain. Hain is the Aramaic way of saying yes, but he changes nachon to takain from the root tikun, meaning fixed, something which has been proper, right? But what he's saying is, it's not right, it's not acceptable to do this. What I want you to think about as I translate this verse is, to whom is Moses speaking? Moses says it's not right to do this. Ki to'avat Mitzrayim nizbach l'Adonai Eloheinu, for it is, or because it is the to'eva of Mitzrayim. It's a really hard phrase in that, the double way that a possessive phrase can be understood. It could be whatever to'eva is. It could be something that the Egyptians consider to be a to'eva, or the Egyptians' to'eva, that's something that they are in possession of. To'eva is understood generally in what way in English? Abomination, a detestable thing, right? The Torah uses to describe many things that that the Torah did not want us to be doing. It's from a root, taf ayin bet, which we have in the end of the Yashamnus, tiavnu, right? Usually to yearn for something that is considered unacceptable, right? It's a to'eva of Mitzrayim, that we are nizbach, slaughtering, sacrificing to God, Adonai our God. Hein nizbach et to'evat Mitzrayim, something like, behold, we will slaughter the to'eva of Egypt, le'eneihem, in front of their eyes, velo yiskalunu, and they will not stone us. What punctuation should we put at the end of that phrase? Question mark, right? It seems to be an interrogative, like what? You think we're going to slaughter something that is a to'eva to them in front of their eyes, and they're not going to slaughter us? Which makes us really wonder, how is the word to'eva being used? Is the thing that we're slaughtering a to'eva, or is the fact that we're slaughtering it a to'eva? If this thing that we're slaughtering is a to'eva, I'm going to build an if on an if, and if to'eva is something detestable, why should it bother them? If the slaughtering is the to'eva, then it must be that we're slaughtering something that is revered by them, right? Or, just to set up the Rashi, to'eva can mean both simultaneously, something detestable and something that other people revere, but the fact that they revere it, we consider that to be detestable, right? So imagine, trying to think of a modern analog. I guess we could just stay in the realm of idolatry, right? If we consider Torah to be a real revolution against the notion of idolatry, then we can refer to idolaters' idols as a detestable thing, because it's detestable to us. It's detestable to us because they revere it, because they consider this stone idol to have any power. If we said that to them, they would consider that to be rather insulting. If we said it to us, it's our way of, in just describing the object of their worship, we are actually reinforcing our own theology, right? So all of those are possibilities here. I'm not saying which one is right, but how we understand to'eva impacts why it might be a problem for us to do the sacrifice in front of their eyes. So let me pause there and see any reactions to what I said or the words themselves, because Rashi's going to go deep into this a bit. Alan,
I just wanted to share
a little bit louder.
I just wanted to share something about the word nachon and what the root is.
Okay.
I really think it's kaf vav nun.
Kun.
It's related not just for the cane. There's a midrash I learned from David Nimmer many years ago. Talks about prayer. When you're dealing with prayer, the first thing you have to do is get mukhan. You have to be ready. And when you're ready, then you can go and pray with kavanah, with intention. And once you've gotten ready and you prayed, then your prayers will be nachon. It will be correct. And all of mukhan, kavanah, and nachon is kaf vav nun.
That's really lovely and rich, Alan. Thank you. And once you start thinking about words that may or certainly are built from that root, you realize it's a very big family, right? Lehit konen, to like be prepared to do something, could be from the very word from which we get nachon. Another one came to mind as you were talking, but I've lost it. But yes, it could be that those are all very related, and that's a lovely way of thinking about tefillah. So thank you for that. Anything else in this verse before we look at Rashi? Or your thoughts about what to'eva might mean? It's complicated because even, these keys are also ambiguous, because key could mean because, key could be such that it's hard to know how to construct it all together. I can't show this. I can't show the screen, but I'll just have to read it out loud to everyone in the room, the different translations of this verse. But while I'm pulling that up, Norm, go ahead.
I think the word to'eva is loaded, especially because we usually translate it as abomination in English, and abomination sounds like it's just a really terrible thing. But I think in many contexts, maybe all, it just means it's distasteful. They don't really like it. It's not that it's really so awful. It's just that most people find it distasteful.
Right. So if they find it distasteful, then all of a sudden the syntax is odd, because he's saying that the distasteful thing of Egypt we are sacrificing to God. But the problem from the Egyptians' perspective would not be that we would be sacrificing a distasteful thing, but that our sacrificing it is distasteful.
Yes.
Right? So the word may be operating in two ways at the same time. Let me read you some of the translations. This is Everett Fox's translation of the verse. I can't put it up there because we're not connected, but I'll just, people on Zoom are seeing it. You'll just have to hear it in the room. Moshe said, "It would not be wise," that's the nachon, "to do thus wise," Cain. What I love about that is that he's playing in English on nachon and Cain being built from the same word, but with this word wise. I think that was very wise of him. Haha. And there's even a note in the Everett Fox that people on the screen can see. He bolds wise and thus wise, and then he writes nachon ... Cain. So he's telegraphing to the person reading it. It's an intentional translation there. "It would not be wise to do thus wise, for Egypt's abomination." Again, Egypt's abomination can mean two things: an abomination owned by Egypt, or the fact that we are doing this is an abomination to Egypt. "For Egypt's abomination is what we sacrifice to our God." So the way he translates it is the way the verse says it. But that's odd. If we're sacrificing something that is an abomination to Egypt, they should cheer us on. Well done for sacrificing our abomination. I won't give you his note yet, because that will wait for Rashi. "For Egypt's abomination is what we sacrifice to our God. If we were to sacrifice Egypt's abomination before their eyes, would they not stone?" Again, that would make more sense if we were to sacrifice Egypt's revered thing before their eyes, would they not stone? So the presence of the word abomination in that verse is challenging. I'll read you Koran translation. "And Moshe said, it is not proper so to do." So they're not playing in the English on the Nachon and Cain. "For we shall sacrifice the abomination of Mitzrayim to the Lord our God." That part is similar to Fox. "Lo," that's the Hain, behold, "shall we sacrifice the abomination of Mitzrayim before their eyes, and they will not stone us?" Maintaining the oddity in the verse that the thing we are sacrificing is the abomination, not the fact that we're sacrificing it. JPS. "But Moses replies, it would not be right to do this, for what we sacrifice to the Lord our God is untouchable to the Egyptians. That's moving in a different direction. It's suggesting that to'eva doesn't just mean something detestable, but something
above and beyond.
Right. The reason why it might be detestable is you shouldn't touch it. But another reason you may want to not touch it is that it's revered, it's holy. If we sacrifice that which is untouchable to the Egyptians, some animal that they revere before their very eyes, will they not stone us? And then last one that I'll share with you, this is where is he? The Charles Kahana one. But Moses said, it is not proper that we should offer as a sacrifice in Egypt. He's now paraphrasing, not translating. It is not proper that we should offer as a sacrifice in Egypt the sheep, which is the idol of Egypt. The word sheep does not appear in the verse, but he's converting, impacted a little bit by Rashi, the word to'eva into an animal that they revere, and I'm adding on to him. And since they revere it, we consider it to be detestable. Go back to my question I asked before. Whom is Moses speaking to in this verse? To the eternal, our Almighty, if we sacrifice the idol of Egypt in the presence of the Egyptians, will they not stone us? So two major thrusts, keeping the oddity of the verse that we're sacrificing something they considered to be detestable. That's what the grammar says. And therefore, they'll not stone us. Or we're using the word to'eva to reference something that they revere, and then makes more sense the content. Of course, they're going to be angry at us if we sacrifice something they revere. Joel, Norm, and then I unfortunately have to go to a funeral.
Okay, I think you're doing a little bit of presentism here.
Okay.
Well, you think that sacrificing something is going against what you're sacrificing. Well, actually, to them, I think they were honoring it. If you take the most perfect animal to sacrifice to God, you're honoring the animal. You're not detesting the animal. So we would think it would be an abomination to take a pig and put it on the altar, because it's detestable to us, and therefore we don't want to put it on something that's holy.
So, okay, I accept that. So then make sense of why Moshe is saying they will be angry at us for doing this.
They will be. They either could be angry as the Hindu would be angry if we sacrificed a cow, or as a Jew would be angry if we put a pig on a holy altar.
And the Hindus would be angry because how dare you sacrifice only we get to...
That's the way you were interpreting it.
Right.
And I'm saying, or it could be that it's a disgusting animal, and therefore, or the whole practice is disgusting, and therefore they would stone us for doing that.
So you can't sacrifice that animal, only we can.
No one should sacrifice the animal. It's a disgusting animal.
But in the first one...
In the first one, yes.
Right, like you can't do that to our pledges, only we can do that to our pledges. Norm.
I don't think we find sheep to be a to'eva. Sheep get sacrificed, they get slaughtered, they get kashered, they get cooked and eaten. And what we find abominable is their treatment of sheep as being divine in a way that other animals and people aren't.
Right.
And so what exactly is abominable to whom is unclear. And, our thought is we sacrifice a good animal. I don't know, we can assume Egyptians were the same, but I don't think that's a good assumption. And Toga's not here. The Egyptians may well have not sacrificed sheep because they were considered a holy animal to them, and only sacrificed goats.
Yeah.
Because sheep are too important to sacrifice, and their method of sacrifice might involve burning it to a crisp and not being able to eat it.
Yeah.
Unlike our sacrifice. So it's just hard to say. The idea, though, that they will find our form of worship to be abominable and will stone us is something we can easily understand. And the idea that we find their religious practices abominable, we can also easily understand. And the details don't matter.
Very helpful comment that we have not resolved the ambiguity, nor will we have resolved it after we finish Rashi. I'm not even sure Rashi thinks he's resolved it. But we still have enough material to kind of have the meta conversation as to what happens when you have two people who do religion differently and how they might react when someone else does either their religion in your presence or appropriates your religion in their presence. I'm thinking of and with this last sentence, of the very strong and very opposing reactions we had even in our community. One of the times when we've had an iftar, we've hosted our friends at the Pacific Institute during Ramadan, where we've had a program, and then towards the end of a fast day, we've actually done it a few times overlapping with one of our fast days, depending what time of year it is. Sometimes like we've got a fast day too, right? And we've opened up Pilch Hall and they've done Mariv, their version of Mariv, and some people have like, we're watching them, not like gawking, but to be witness to their tefillah, right? So there were a lot of non-reactions too, but each time we've done it, I've gotten very strong reactions, right? And you can imagine, some are saying, what a beautiful thing to see the brotherhood and sisterhood of peaceful Muslims in our building, feeling safe to pray in our buildings, and watching their faith and their humility, how they pray. Like, this is not an abomination. This is not a desecration of Pilch Hall. This is an elevation of Pilch Hall to be Beiti Beit Tfilati L'chol Hamim, that my temple should be a house of worship for all people. And how disgusting, Rabbi, that you allow foreign worship in our synagogue, right? I actually understand both reactions, right? I made a decision that we were going to do the former. I understand both reactions because both reactions are a natural way of responding to another people doing their version of worship in your midst. It's not exactly the same what's going on here, but it's the same overarching conversation. There's more to say. We can start right here next week. I have to go to Hillside.
Next week, 2 weeks. You said no.
2 weeks. Yes, thank you. 2 weeks. Is that next week already? Yes, correct. 2 weeks. Bye, everyone. Sorry for the technological issues. See you around.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.